Hello everyone, I am Mick Sass, one of the 6 inspectors for RVIA. Today we are going to discuss grounding of metal J boxes as detailed in the National Electric Code under 551.55a. This simple requirement of the NEC is a common deviation found by the inspection staff of RVIA. Any metal enclosure used in the 120 volt system must be grounded. Grounding metal enclosures in the electrical system ensures that a low resistant path for the electrical current to ground is present in the event the enclosure were to become energized. With a low resistant path to ground provided for the current, there is a reduced risk of the current taking the high resistant path through the person who comes in contact with an energized metal enclosure. Here we have two common junction boxes. The photo on the left is for use on the interior of RVs, and on the right is a typical watertight junction box used on the exterior of RVs. Junction boxes are designed to accommodate a specific number of wires and devices. They come in various shapes and sizes. The size is based on the number of cubic inches they provide for the wires and devices. But today's discussion, we will only be looking at the grounding of these metal enclosures. Remember that metal enclosures are also part of other electrical components in an RV. These include distribution panel boards, converters, and inverters. All of these devices are also considered to be in enclosures. They contain equipment that receives electricity, distributes it, and/or converts it. When these devices are in enclosures, which are referred to as cases, they also are equipped with a means of grounding them to chassis. These are called the case grounds, as seen here on the right. They do exactly the same thing as we will be doing when we ground the metal junction boxes. One more note before discussing how to properly ground our metal junction boxes. You will have heard the term grounded and bonded. These two terms really do mean the same thing. They are leading dangerous current away from people by providing a low resistant path to ground. But there is a significant difference. Grounding is providing a path to ground for metal components within the electrical system itself. This is true of metal junction boxes, distribution panel boards, and devices such as converters and inverters. All of these are part of the 120 volt electrical system. On the other hand, there is bonding. Bonding also provides a path to ground for metal components of an RV that may become energized. But these components are not part of the 120 volt electrical system. These can be such items as the metal heating ducts, iron and copper piping for the propane system, metal roofing, or the metal siding of an RV. All of these items must have a path to ground, or in the case of an RV, a path to chassis ground. So, let's look at a couple of means of grounding metal junction boxes. Grounding clips are very common in the RV industry. These clips are simply attached to the side of the metal J box with the ground wire inserted into the interior as seen here on the right. Proper installation of a junction box with a ground clip requires that the installer minimize the gap between the J box and its cover. Only the thickness of the ground clip itself is allowed in a proper installation. In the photo on the left, you can see that if a ground clip and its associated ground wire are installed in this manner, the thickness of the wire and the clip will create a very large gap between the J box and its cover. That would obviously be too large a gap and incorrect. The photo on the right also shows a ground clip installed incorrectly. Even when installed on the outside of the J box, the ground wire will need to pass back through to the interior of the box, creating a larger gap. Again, only the thickness of the ground clip is acceptable. The first step is to insert the ground conductor into the clip from the bottom inside orientation as seen on the left. Then, with a straight screwdriver and using the protrusion made for the clip installation, as seen on the right, push the ground clip down until the top of the clip is resting on the edge of the J-box. Then, with the clip in position, use the screwdriver to bend the ground wire down against the J-box interior wall. This completes the installation of the ground clip. Remember that an extra length of ground wire can be left extending through the clip to be used for additional connections to ground wires, as seen here in the photo on the right. Ground screws are also used to connect components of the 120-volt electrical system. As seen here and in the previous slides, grounding devices such as ground clips and screws are colored green. It is not acceptable to use any other screw for grounding purposes. Wood screws, self-tapping screws, or machine screws not intended for grounding are not acceptable. Ground screw locations are provided with each type of J-box. These specific holes for the ground screw are threaded and marked as the grounding location. Again, the use of self-tapping screws anywhere, including the hole specified for grounding wire connection, is not acceptable. It should also be noted that when a ground lug is used in a junction box, that the listed green ground screw is still necessary. This commonly used 4x4 junction box is also fitted with a raised and threaded ground screw hole. Again, even in this configuration, a listed ground screw is required and in its designated location. All the other open holes seen here are intended for securement of the J-box. Wood screws and self-tapping screws are intended for this purpose of connecting the box to the structure of the RV. Use of these holes with any associated wood screw, self-tapping screw, or machine screw to create the connection to ground is not acceptable. When installing a ground screw, the box and the wires to be grounded need to be prepared. First, bring the wires into the junction box and secure with cable clamps as required. Then organize the hot wires, the black wires, together, and the neutral wires, the white wires, and then finally your ground wires. Using wire nuts as shown here, join the hot wires with one wire nut and the neutral wires with the second wire nut. Then, with the two ground wires, add a pigtail of appropriate length and with a clockwise 2/3 loop on the end. Finally, placing the pigtail on the green ground screw in a clockwise direction, tighten the grounding pigtail under the ground screw. Again, assure that the pigtail is secured on the green ground screw in a clockwise direction and that it covers 2/3 of the screw's circumference as seen here. Tighten the grounding pigtail under the ground screw and the grounding is complete. It should also be noted that ground screws may or may not be supplied with junction boxes. Ground clips and ground screws in many cases need to be purchased separately from the junction boxes. Also be aware that ground clips will be marked with the size and the wire that they will accommodate. The ground clip on the far right will accept a number 14 through a number 12 gauge wire. Thanks for attending this mini webinar on grounding of J-boxes. This and other mini webinars are available on the RVIA Standards YouTube station.